Welcome to tonight's Saturday Night Special, where we're going to talk about having a word of the year.
I'm Robert Farrington from thecollegeinvestor.com. I encourage you to be inspired to become a better steward through financial wisdom by listening to this show, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Mader.
Then I look at those goals and I'm looking for themes. I'm looking for characteristics. I'm looking for things that are indicated in there. Do the goals indicate an area that's missing in my life? Do they indicate an area where I'm trying to grow or expand something in my life? Do they indicate an area where I'm trying to inject sort of a new emotion or a new feeling? Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In tonight's Saturday Night Special, I talk with you about why having a word of the year is a great practice to have, how doing this can help you filter your goals, your opportunities, and your activities for the year, and why choosing that word is important and how you can do it. And I'll also share with you my word for 2020. One area that a lot of folks need some help with is around the area of productivity. Getting not just more things done, but actually getting the right things done can be really, really tough. I've got a course called Productivity for Your Passion that's designed to help you do this and then to hold you accountable and walk with you so that you can tailor productivity not just to be getting more done, but actually getting the right things done. What's more, we take the approach of looking at your personality and how you actually look at things in the world and tailor the productivity system to your personality. Because the truth is, a lot of the systems that are out there are written really well for somebody with a particular personality type. But if you have a different approach to things, they just don't work. But there's tools and techniques and approaches that you can take that will work for anyone. And we help you do that in Productivity for Your Passion. Check it out over at inspiredstewardship.com/launch. So you've probably seen a few posts this week about people announcing their word of the year for 2020. Or maybe they reflected on how 2019 connected to the word they chose last year. There's a book about choosing a word of the year. And at first glance, it seems kind of intimidating to try to think about picking a single word that's going to be your focus for the entire year. But I've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years now, and I've found great power in it. But I will also tell you that there's some things that you need to know and understand to make this effective. What a lot of people will do is they kind of choose their word of the year because everyone else is doing it. And so they'll have a word and they announce it, but they don't actually do anything with that word. The word doesn't affect their life. The word doesn't affect them in terms of what they're doing in that year or not doing in that year. Instead, they just kind of pick it and then forget it and they move on. And it becomes just like setting an ineffective New Year's resolution or any of the other things we've been talking about this week. It just becomes another little activity that you do and you share because everyone else does it. And that isn't the way to use it. Instead, if you are doing this, if you are trying to come up with a theme for your year that you can sum up in one single word, you need to go about it and be more effective in both choosing it and then what you do with it after you choose it. See, the power of having your entire focus for the year summed up in one word is that you can keep that word in front of you all year long. You can put that word on your lock screen on your phone. You can put that word on a big poster in front of you wherever you work. You can post it in front of you on your car dashboard. You can put it as your screensaver on your computer and maybe as the desktop image on your computer. You can put the word in front of you all year long, and then you can use that theme to filter the goals that you set for this year. Look and see if the goals that you've set have an alignment with that word. Look for the opportunities that come up. When a new opportunity comes in front of you, we often get distracted and go towards the shiny object because something comes along and it sounds cool, it sounds neat, it sounds fun, but is it in alignment with your theme, with your focus for this year? If you've chosen a word, then very quickly you can bounce that opportunity against that word and say, does it move me in that direction? The activities that you're doing, what are you adding to your calendar? What are you adding to your to-do list? Are those activities in alignment with growing in the direction that that word indicates? The truth is, if you're not using the word as a filter for everything else, then it just becomes a cute activity that you do. It can be very important and very effective, or it can just be one more cute little thing that you do this year. So for me, I use that word. I try to look back. I actually do the review of last year, which we've talked about over the last few weeks. And then I do a planning session where I set goals for the year. Then I look at those goals and I'm looking for themes. I'm looking for characteristics. I'm looking for things that are indicated in there. Do the goals indicate an area that's missing in my life? Do they indicate an area where I'm trying to grow or expand something in my life? Do they indicate an area where I'm trying to inject sort of a new emotion or a new feeling? I try to reflect on the pattern that is present in those goals. And then I pray and I reflect and I spend some time on it. And I often will generate list after list of words, and I will even look up. Sometimes you can find lists of, 100 or more words if you just search for them, suggestions for your word of the year and whatnot. And you'll find lists that have emotional words, things like bravery and courage and generosity. And you'll find things that have adventuresome words, explore, fearless. And you'll find things that talk about characteristics, integrity, hopeful. You'll find things that are focused on more tangible goals like learn or grow. For me, as I've done that last year, in fact, my word of the year for 2019 was grow, because I was focused on growing my business and I was focused on growing what I was doing around myself. I wasn't focused on learning. That was my word for 2018. Instead, I was focused on taking what I already knew and growing it, making it more than it was before. And this year for me, 2020, this year's focus for me is execute. There's actually a long list of things that I've had floating around for several months that I know I need to do. I know they would help my business. I know they would help me personally. I know they would help my family relationships. And they came back this year and made it into my goals for 2020. And as I reflect on that theme, the theme this year is about following through. The theme this year for me is about executing on these goals that I've had for a while and known I needed to do, but I've just been letting them go. I'm not focused on them because things are working really well. It's the exact same stuff that I talked to you about on this podcast, how sometimes the good can be the enemy of the great, because when things are going well, it's often the hardest time to do the changes that you really need to do. And so for me, this year is all about execution. I'm looking for opportunities that allow me to execute. I'm looking for things within my business that allow me to execute. I'm looking for things in my relationships that allows me to execute. Not as in to kill the people that I'm in a relationship with, but actually execute as in to take those relationships deeper and further than they went before. And in all ways, that becomes the theme. If an opportunity comes along and it's not moving towards execution of one of these big goals that I've set, then it's not really an opportunity that I need to focus on for 2020. And that's why the word becomes important. It's what you do after you pick the word, how you use that word to filter and to drive what you do all year long, to drive what you say yes to, but even more to drive what you say no to. Because more often than not, what really keeps you back isn't what you're saying yes to. It's what you fail to say no to. So that's what we need to do this year. If you're picking a word, make sure you don't just pick it and set it up on a shelf, but make sure you keep it front and center all year long and use that as a filter for your goals, your opportunities, and your activities and how you're doing them all year long, and make 2020 the best year ever. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word. iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.